Hello and welcome to the Wine Enthusiast Podcast, your serving of drinks, culture, and the people who drive it. I'm Jordan Kaplan, managing editor here at Wine Enthusiast. Today we have a few very special guests in anticipation of our upcoming film issue of Wine Enthusiast magazine. It's out next week. Today we're sitting down with one of our main feature interviews, actor and winery owner Kyle MacLachlan, as well as his partner and winemaker Dan Wampfler, both owners of the Washington-based winery Pursued by Bear. Today's conversation will be led by wine enthusiast contributor and friend of the pod, Todd Brilliant. They'll discuss the parallels of wine, entertainment, and even chemistry. Enjoy.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm Todd Brilliant, longtime host of the Super Nice Club podcast, Daylighting Today at Wine Enthusiast, and I'm here with actor, winery owner Kyle MacLachlan, and his partner, winemaker Dan Wampfler. Together, they own, run, and enjoy Pursued by Bear Winery in Walla Walla, Washington. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. How are you, Todd?
Good morning, Todd.
All right, good morning, gents. First of all, I'd like to know where you are both at. Kyle, where are you at right now? Where are you sitting?
I'm
What city?
about 84%, Todd. That's where I am right now. I'm sitting in my former dining room in my home in LA. Ever since COVID, this has been transformed into my little office, and we just don't have any people over for dinner anymore. So there you go.
Kyle, thank you for that. Dan, where are you at?
I'm at home in Walla Walla, and normally I would have this call from the winery, but there's a lot of forklifts and traffic in the cellar, so my office isn't super quiet. So I thought I'd do it from the tranquility and silence of the Kyle MacLachlan suite here in the basement of our home.
Oh, that's where you are. I love it.
Walla Walla, Washington, the Kyle MacLachlan suite in the basement.
Yeah. So when Kyle comes to Walla Walla, he stays with us, and we're lucky enough to have a beautiful home, and there's kind of a kitchenette and big couch and a private bedroom and bathroom and everything down in the basement. And it's really quiet and large and well lit. And we affectionately refer to it as the Kyle MacLachlan suite because this is where he stays when he's in town.
All right, so you two are partners at Pursued by Bear Winery, and I would love to just get your origin story. How you met, obviously, is a big deal, and then we'll get into the rest of things.
Cool. So when I first started, my first vintage was 2005. So I've been at this for 20 years. Dear Lord. I was custom crushing, making wine at a different winery, Dunham Cellars, also in Walla Walla, working with Eric Dunham and his father, Mike Dunham. And shortly after I started with Eric, Dan came into the mix. They brought Dan in. Dan was at first as an assistant winemaker, and then you quickly, straight in as winemaker.
Yeah, Eric was transitioning into marketing and sales and traveling the world, and they brought me in as head winemaker to replace him. There was an assistant winemaker at the time, and he was on the way out. So I think his last week was my first week. And it was fast transition.
Yeah. And so we started working together very early in my journey, working with Dan. And we just hit it off. Quality was at the very tip top of our list. And we started off, looking at our sources and at our barrels, and kind of from the very beginning approached it as not just a kind of a hobby project or a side project, but really as a passion, and really intent on making great wine from Washington. And so that was the beginning, and we haven't changed our course.
Dan, this was 2006. Is that what you said?
2008 is when I arrived at Dunham. So the 2006 vintage was in barrel.
Okay, so 2008, you must have been about 15 years old, Dan. Come on.
I appreciate that compliment. I'm 72. I drink a lot of red wine. It's keeping me young.
Very good.
You must have been a young winemaker. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I'd say that's fair. I came out of graduate school and went right into the industry. 23 years old was my first full-time position in the wine industry.
Wow, good for you. And your wife, Amy, is also a winemaker, right? Tell us a little bit about where she's at.
Well, she's she's at work. So we're co-general managers and co-winemakers at Abeja. So I like to say that we divide and she conquers. So she's conquering currently as I sit and have a podcast with you guys.
Nice.
Thank you, Amy. We appreciate it. We do. Okay, so your first vintage, what was it?
My first vintage, I suppose, would be 2001, back at Michigan State when I was in as an undergrad. So I transferred from chemistry major to enology, the science of winemaking, and viticulture, the science of grape growing, and never looked back. And so, yeah, a lot of vintages now.
And the first Pursued by Bear, was that a cab? What was that?
We did, my first vintage in '05 was a blend, actually. I had 12 barrels, and I had specified a cooperage called Terran So, French New Oak, that had been recommended to me by some a very good winemaker friend in Napa, Anne Colgan. And her winemaker at the time was a gentleman named Mark Aubert, who now owns his own winery, his own facility, makes terrific, mostly whites, actually, and some Pinots. And he said, Terran So is the way to go. And I was like, okay. So they actually helped me procure 12 barrels. 10 of the barrels we filled with Cabernet. One of the barrels we filled with Merlot, and one of the barrels with Syrah. And at the time when we went into blending, we just basically just put them all together in one big vat, and that was the blend. And we came out of the gate with an '05 Pursued by Bear Cabernet Sauvignon, because it was cab dominant. And the kind people at Wine Spectator, Harvey Steinman at the time, gave us a 91 rating, and it's the best review I've ever had in my life, of my career.
So people, I'm trying to see how to word this. Yeah, let's just revisit this from the article, because you probably get this a lot. Where to start it? Yeah, I'm thinking out loud. You're coming into the wine world as an actor with quite a reputation, quite a niche, quite a special career that you had at that point. Did you find that you had to prove yourself a little extra and show your bona fides so that people would take you seriously? Or did you find that the wine world was just very open as you came into it?
Well, both, actually. I felt that the wine world was very open, and that's one of the great qualities of Washington State. It's all one for all for one, one for all and all for one kind of feeling there overall, and tremendous support. And I also had, when I first started, Eric was, kind of the mentor, and sort of showed me the ropes, showed me around, introduced me around, and that was very helpful. Because he was from there. I grew up in Yakima, which is about 2 hours to the north and west from Walla Walla. Same basic geography, Eastern Washington. But I came into it with already with an understanding that this was something that had to be earned. I wasn't coming in to slap my name on something and just put it out there and hope people would buy it and be around for a year or two. It was much more intentional than that. I mean, it was still for fun, but I thought, if we're going to do this, I really want to make great wine. I don't want to put my name on the front of the label. I want the wine to speak for itself. And Dan was completely on board with that as well. It was really about making great wine and surprising people. I wanted to walk into a place and people go, okay, I know what I'm going to get. I expect this to be an actor's, he's just playing it, making wine. And then they would try it. And every time they would look at me with a new, I wouldn't say respect, but with a new appreciation, I guess. And I was like, oh, actually, you're serious about this. And I said, yes, I am. And I knew that would take, well, I didn't know how long, but it took a while for people to really come around to the idea that this was something that was important to me.
And Dan, how long did it take for you to come around to realize that Kyle was serious and passionate about wine?
It was immediate. It was when he walked into the vineyard and he walked into the cellar and tasted barrels. And, I'm in this for the long haul. This is my not just job or career or way of life. I like to call it church, and our church key has a corkscrew on it. And we were saying the same hymn. We're singing the same hymns. And I think that the authenticity and the fact that this is not a vanity project for Kyle drew me in immediately. I love the inquisitive nature. I love the pursuit of excellence that Kyle brings, and the fire for continuing to evolve each vintage to be better, to find better vineyard sources, to do better things viticulturally, to find better toast levels that match with our wines. And it was just an immediate draw. And ultimately, he's just a kid from Yakima. If you didn't know what he did for a living, you'd never know, because he's so grounded and down to earth, and human, and lovable and loving. It's just really rewarding on every level.
So I'm going to change it up a little bit, and I hear that. That's great to hear. You guys have a great rapport as partners, which is clear in all the interviews that I've read about you two. Except the fact that he sticks you in a basement, but I mean, clearly
It's well lit. It's well lit.
Well,
you're
There's a
overlooking that.
coffee machine.
Yeah. And there's also all sorts of different streamers on the television, which is great. I got Hulu, I've got Netflix, I got everything.
Oh, you're set up.
Yeah.
Dan, when you're with someone tasting your wine, do you feel compelled to explain the nuances of the wine, or are you more into just letting the wine explain itself first?
Oh, definitely let the wine explain itself first. I don't like to put descriptors in other people's minds. I don't think that's fair. I like to let the wine open up to a critic, or to a client or a customer, or just a lover of wine, and let them kind of come to their own conclusions and watch their facial expressions. And then I'll lean in when kind of given the cues to offer context and winemaking nuance comments. But no, I want people to be on their own journey with that glass of wine. It's discovery, and it's an experience in the glass, and it's unique and special. And I don't want to give too much of a map. And so we've got the sextant, we've got the the old school map, we've got GPS, and I kind of want people to go through that journey on their own.
I like the way you put that. Over the years, what have you seen for Washington State wines and your availability to get into restaurants in California and other territories? Has that gotten easier? Are you finding a lot of momentum there?
It really comes down to the person running the list, honestly, and the SOM or the beverage manager, and what they're interested in, and how much they're willing to support or push their clientele a little bit. And who knows, every restaurant's got a different group, and whether or not the people that come to that particular restaurant are really, they like traditional, they want to nap a cab if they're going to go big. And it's hard to sometimes it's hard to break into that kind of mindset, and every place is different. Or we have other places that are much more open to diversity, and that are excited about the idea of turning their customers on to something new. They'll suggest, and honestly, when I go to a restaurant, I will just kind of close the wine list and talk to the SOM and say, hey, listen, this is what I like. Kind of, here's the price point. This is kind of the flavor profile I like, but I'm open to other stuff. What do you suggest? And I go right to the SOM and ask them, what they're excited about, and that starts a conversation that is interesting to me, and that more often than not, they'll rise to the occasion. The SOM will take a few minutes and say, okay, this is what I got, and this is what's happening, and we'll have a little dialogue, and we'll decide on a wine kind of together, as opposed to me coming in, looking at a list and saying, oh, because I tend to fall back on I know this one, I'll drink that one. That's what I'm going to order tonight. And I like to be pushed as a diner a little bit.
And Dan, what are you seeing in terms of receptiveness to Washington wine since you started?
Well, I definitely agree that it comes down to the buyer ultimately, but there has been a few key people and organizations really leading the charge to educate the world of wine, and so it's getting easier. I've been in Washington State since '02, and walking into an account on the East Coast, it was like, oh no, we're on the other side of the Potomac. That 20 years
Oh
ago.
no.
And now it's like, oh, Washington wine. Yeah. I'm loving what Washington is doing. And so the Washington Wine Commission and some key producers throughout Washington State, and frankly, talented media folk like yourself that are willing to step up to the microphone and to the pen and the articles, and talk about how world-class Washington not only is, but has been for decades, has
Mhm.
made a huge impact. So it's getting easier. It's still a slightly uphill battle, and I think that changes with the landscape of the wine world on a daily basis at this point.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm going to read a recent headline, you guys, that is intriguing.
Is this from the Walla Walla Bulletin? Is this about Dan, about that's thing you did with when you no pants? Or I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Todd. That was it.
No, that we'll get to that one later. But
Okay.
this one this one reads: Kyle MacLachlan is the best thing that ever happened to the internet. He is healing the world one social media post at a time. It's a pretty big claim. Are you healing the world one social media post at a time, Kyle?
You know, it's so nice that my wife put that out there because she's my biggest fan. And I really enjoy social media. I enjoy the structure of it. I enjoy the fact you can tell a little story, a short story. You can do something silly, and inevitably, that's what I do. I don't use it as a platform much for other. Occasionally, pointing the direction maybe to a charity that I really think is important or an organization that's important. But by and large, I use it as just a form of bringing a smile, hopefully, to people's faces, and that brings me a lot of joy.
So has all the social media love, and there's a lot. You have a lot of followers. You have a lot of articles written about you and your TikTok game. Has that translated to any attention to the wines?
You know, the wine it does make its way into the TikTok occasionally. It's a good question because there are two things going on. There's kind of Kyle career and fun stuff, and then there's wine, which is also fun. But it's the wine is also around the outside we have a good time, but the wine itself is quite serious, and I want to take a little bit of the stuffiness out of that. And I think if we can make it more accessible and think to a younger people who are interested in wine, let's say, or might have a curiosity about wine, if we can make it just more accessible, that's great. I certainly remember when I was younger, I did not know a thing, and the only way you're really going to learn about wine, if it you have your passion for it, is just to try different things, talk to people, acknowledge that you don't know anything, you know a few things that you like, and take the journey to discover. And you have to be open to that. And I try to make that option as friendly, I guess, as possible.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Making the wine world friendly and accessible is always been sort of a challenge. And not because it isn't friendly and accessible, but because it just wine comes with a certain level of intimidation and like, oh my gosh, there's so much I have to learn in order to know what I'm talking about. And then there's the imposter syndrome that pops up when somebody asks you to taste or swirl, or you're the one who gets the glass at the table and you have to judge whether or not it's okay. And it's like, oh, this is scary. That doesn't happen with tequila, right? So anybody doing anything that is making the wine world friendlier and fun has to be a win. So I hope the industry is all about your TikTok game right now, whether you're dressed up as a hot dog.
There are some wines that go well with hot dogs.
Yeah.
Yes, it really is. It really is the goal. You make something. So much goes into the process of making wine, as you know, that the tendency is to treat it with kid gloves, very very delicately. You know what I mean? But it really, everyone's doing it. They love it. It's a passion. We are somewhat at the mercy of nature. Each year, you don't know what's going to happen, what comes in from the sources, from your vineyards. You do the best you can, and we're learning. We learn every vintage. That process never stops. So the education is ongoing and fascinating to me.
Dan, how's your TikTok game?
Non-existent. I have two daughters that take care of that for me. I stay away from social media engagement as much as possible because I will go down the rabbit hole quickly. Like I've discovered the new AI photo generation, and I just lay in bed making hilarious photos and sending it to my friends, including Kyle. And yeah, it's better that I don't have anything else.
Are you tired of showing up to dinner parties with run-of-the-mill wine that doesn't excite you or any of your friends? Wish you had a personal sommelier to guide you toward epiphany-inducing bottles that'll rock everyone's world? Sommstation is here to help. Its expert team seeks out incredible wines from top independent producers, aka bottles you won't find in grocery stores or on liquor store shelves. These are the opposite of mass-produced wines. Sommstation's online wine shop features hundreds of bottles handcrafted with meticulous care, with top-notch fruit by the most skilled winemakers. Also in the mix, curated wine club options that'll have you discovering new favorites. Whether you're in the market for a single bottle, virtual tasting experiences, private tastings, or a wine club membership, Sommstation makes it easy and can make your wine experience even more special.
So I want to go back to something you just said, Kyle, about winemaking being at the mercy of nature, right? Of weather, and just nature's hard limits. But we live in this culture, to get a little more serious for a second here, Dan, I hope that's cool with you. We live in a culture that really believes that infinite growth is possible on a finite planet. As a winemaker, as a farmer, what do you think other industries can learn from the pace and the sort of longer horizon thinking of winemaking and of farming? Because you have to be planning a decade in advance when you're working with your growers, right? Sometimes more.
Yeah, absolutely. We're we're finding vineyard sources at higher elevations that have cooler, better drainage, more diurnal shift. And I'm no climatologist, but global warming is real, and it's got to be a forethought, not an afterthought, in what we're doing in the vineyard and in the winemaking. Winemakers plan, viticulturists plan, and Mother Nature laughs. And every vintage has its challenges and unique sets of logistical obstacles, whether that be forest fires in the south, whether that's hard freezes, rain when at bloom, wind, deer, pest problems, heat. I mean, we've got it all. We're lucky in Washington where a majority, if not all of those factors are buffered by the quality environment that and the terroir that Washington is known for. But yeah, absolutely. We're very methodical about it because it's turning a train on a track or a ship in the ocean. It's not nimble. And what I mean by that is whatever you do in a vineyard today can affect the vine in the vineyard the next 2-3 years. So we have to prep soil for 2 years before we plant, and then we're 3 years before first fruit typically, and then you're for red wines 2 years in the barrel, and then on the year in bottle. That's a long roll. That's a lot of cash and money and time and energy tied up. And we lean on the mentors that came before us, and I've got mine, Ray Einberger and Dave Johnson and Stan Howell, and then we use our peers to bounce ideas off of. And we're, again, lucky in this industry that there's a belief that high tide raises all boats. And that's one of the best factors of Washington viticulture and grape growing is the camaraderie between the growers and the wine producers. And we share information. We don't keep secrets. And that's to our advantage.
So you came into Washington, Dan. You could have gone to another country. You could have gone to California, Oregon, another wine growing region. You ended up in Washington. Looking back on it now, are you so happy that you ended up in Washington because of it's sort of a frontier for wine and those frontier challenges and victories that you get?
Oh, you've totally nailed it. I had opportunities in upstate New York. I did a vintage in Missouri. I could have stayed in Michigan. I had opportunities in Oregon, California, Washington, and Washington came calling with the right factors that checked all the boxes for me, which was a maturing but base level of maturity of industry. It wasn't agritourism. It was a wine industry that was flourishing, but still nowhere near mature. It's still nowhere near mature. And so there is that wild, wild west cowboy. Let's experiment. Let's try planting this variety in this location, and a lot of exploration to continue. Water's available. Property, land is cheaper than some of the other parts. But all of the factors lead up to we can produce great grapes and great wines every year, even under really tough circumstances.
So your chemist curiosity, would you ever do another type of alcohol? Would you ever have you ever thought, oh, it'd be kind of fun to do something else? Like,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I started off brewing beer when I was in high school. Fell in love
of
with
course you did.
fermentation side. Yeah, right. I was popular with the buddies. I've done distillation, small, medium, and large scale. But brewing, I want to keep my career separate from my hobbies. I love to brew
Okay.
beer, but I would want to do it, homebrew style. I would never want to make wine in the garage or in the kitchen. Distillation, I don't have the patience for 15-year-old barrel aged bourbon when I can just go grab a bottle off the shelf. And wine is that perfect medium where we're not doing the same thing any day in a row, racking barrels in the vineyard, tasting wines, blending, filtering, bottling, whatever. And then brewing on the other side it's lather, rinse, repeat. And then every week or every 2 weeks, you're kind of doing the same thing with the same process over and over again. Now, I say that with respect, and I know I'm being very general, but for me, winemaking is that happy balance of science and art, short term and long term, immediate gratification and forced patience. And ultimately, I got into wine because food and wine, in my opinion, are the only two art forms where you can enjoy with all of your senses, and you can literally and figuratively share the fruits of your labor. And that's that's kind of my motto: is it's not worth doing if it's not worth sharing. And so I was lucky enough to find that early in school and in my career.
Well, I appreciate your validating my tendency to eat with my hands a lot. Is you know, which I do because you're right. It's that tactile. You have to get the your senses involved there. Uh, I did do the research though, Dan, and there are two types of agave that are grown in Washington that could be possibly suitable for an American mezcal.
No
So,
kidding.
and yeah, you might, maybe a future goal.
Oh, game on. Let's do it. I'm a equal opportunity hedonist, so tequila sounds like a great idea.
No. Mezcal.
Oh,
Mezcal,
sorry,
to be
sorry.
specific. Yeah, it's much more it's a much more elegant liquor than the
Totally.
tequila. Yeah. Okay. Just want to be sure.
Game on.
Uh,
I'm drinking mezcal right now. What time is it? Yeah, it's 10:30
10:30 p.m.
p.m.
Right?
Oh, well, yes. No,
That's
I
when we're
I
recording.
approve. Let's see if we can find those plants, Dan.
Deal. Let's
I
do
have
it.
notes. I'll send them to you later.
Excellent.
Uh, so Dan, you've heard the whole conversation around, I'm assuming, nepotism in Hollywood, right?
Sure. I've
Actors,
heard
actors'
tell of
kids,
it.
right? I ask because I'm producing a little film right now starring a talented young actor whose parents happen to be Oscar winners. And I want your take on this because your dad was a chemist. Am I right?
You are correct. Yeah, absolutely.
And here you are, a young wine chemist getting all famous on the Wine Enthusiast podcast, which is pretty much like the wine world equivalent of this is your Oscar speech. No, seriously though, how did your dad's career influence you? And do you think that going through and having a chem major at Michigan State gives you a different perspective or approach than winemakers who came up more straight through the viticulture side of things?
Yeah, I don't think it's better or worse. It's just different than.
Hmm.
My mom and my dad are both amazing folks. And my dad is the math science brain, and my mom is the artist, English poetry side. And I think that's kind of where phenotypically I landed. So it's, genotype plus environment equals phenotype. So I've got the artistic side kind of from my mom, and I've got the science minded uh, brain from my dad. And I guess when you grow up in an environment and you just kind of assume, okay, I'm from Midland, Michigan, the hometown of Dow Chemical, a worldwide chemical company. My dad was a chemist, and I studied chemistry. I went to Dow High School. The library was the
Wow.
H.H. Dow Memorial Library, and so I just assumed I never questioned it. I was like, oh, I'm going to go into science. This is where it's going to go. And I worked at Dow Chemical through high school and college, and I claimed chemistry as a major. And sophomore, junior year, I was like, I don't know that I want to wear a white lab coat for the rest of my life. People ask you, oh, what do you do for a living? I make the plastic widgets that go in your lawnmower. Okay, and what do you do for a living? And the conversation goes quickly to someone else. And again, brewing beer and finding a passion of this product that's something you can share with senses, and then there's science involved. It was magical. But speaking to the understanding of chemistry, I think that there's a major advantage of chemistry, not in producing artistic wines, but in finding the ways around the hurdles and the hoops in the challenging years. So winemaking is really easy, quite frankly, if you just get out of the way and everything's perfect. You add yeast and the yeast eat. And we're not winemakers, we're yeast shepherds. Let them do their thing. But when something doesn't go according to plan, you lose refrigeration and the ferment gets too hot, or it rains and you got to change your picking decision, or there are fires, or there are microbial spoilage issues. That's where the chemistry and the logistics comes into play. It's how to stay out of trouble and how to get out of trouble when you find your way there. And luckily in Washington State, viticulture and winemaking, the trouble is not too deep, but I've found myself or a few barrels in trouble, and that chemistry background has allowed us to circumvent point of no return types of scenarios.
That's a great way to put it. How interested has your dad been in the chemistry of wine? Is he geeked out for you?
Oh, for sure. He was instrumental in my graduate studies, and then he jokes that he said, when you were going to school and I changed my major from chemistry to winemaking, he says, okay, so are you going into hospitality? Is this something you really want to do, or do you want to stay grounded in hardcore chemistry? And I was like, no, 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 I definitely want to do it. And so he's fallen in love with wines over the years, and he's fallen for the hospitality sides of things. And they come out every year for harvest. My mom and dad still live in Michigan, and they come out for between 6 and 8 weeks because we do have two daughters, as I said, and so they help us pack lunches and get kids shuttled to and from school and sports, and then dad will come out with a cup of coffee to the winery and watch us process fruit and watch us blend wines, and he can come and go as he pleases, but you can tell he's certainly intrigued. And then grabs a bottle of wine off of my desk and takes it home, and my mom gives us beautiful tasting notes because she's got a elevated and sophisticated palate as well.
And you probably have a centrifuge in your lab anyway, right?
We have two. We have one for larger beakers and one for smaller beakers. Yes, test
Yeah.
tubes.
So your dad is like, it's legit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. He kind of geeks out on that, and I'm like, hey, Dad, do you want to be a harvest intern? He was like, no, I don't. I want to watch for free.
Kyle, when you watch Dan doing his thing, do you ever think, oh man, I'd like to get into this more? Like, is there a winemaker in you?
No, not at all. I so appreciate what Dan does, and I so love that he and Amy both, when I come in with my very rudimentary, primitive language about what I'm tasting and what I'm kind of hoping and what we're trying to go for, that he's able to translate that very eloquently into what I really mean. I'm like, yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I just didn't really know the words or how we were going to get there. So I completely hand over the reins of any of that, the winemaking process, to him. I will say that I'm involved up until the point that chemistry starts to become part of the equation, because I was terrible at chemistry in high school and really had no interest. But I do enjoy the blending process. I do enjoy talking through what we're trying to go for. I do enjoy the flavor profiles and that journey very much, and I'm very, very involved in that process. And we have long conversations about that, and that's about as close as I want to get to the actual process of the winemaking process itself.
So Dan, you make your wine, it gets out into the world, and then you have to submit it on that 0 to 100 point rating thing that various magazines, including ours, put out there. Wineries chase these 100 point scores the way studios chase $1 billion box office totals. Do you think that this obsession with ratings is overall healthy for the wine industry? Where's the value in it for you at the end of the day, other than sales?
Well, sales certainly is the most important recognition of quality. But, I find that over the last decade, there's been an evolution in the communication with wine writers and winemakers, at least with us, to be able to share the story behind the bottle so that it's the people, it's the vineyards, it's the barrels, it's the experience, not just a wine in a glass. And of course, the quality has to be there without question, and the wine has to be able to stand on its own in a blind lineup and say, I've got all of the key characteristics to get 90 plus points. But ultimately, it's one person's opinion at one point in time converging with the age of the wine, and it can change any day. And I think that there's evolution of wines that would score differently at different points. But that's okay. These wine critics are getting it right most of the time. And so we celebrate the high 90s, and luckily we're not getting in the 80s. And we kind of raise an eyebrow at the low 90s and hope for more. But it's art, right? We're the artists and they're the art critics, and so we have to be okay with that. I do want to circle back though, real quick, Todd, because you asked if Kyle wants to get into winemaking, and he said no, but you didn't ask me if I wanted to be in acting, and I want so badly to be either in a cameo with Kyle or on the Smartless podcast or a scene with Will Ferrell. So I'm working on my SAG card, and it's not going relatively fast.
Well, I did have a question in here to Kyle. Would Dan make a good actor, and can you get him a cameo?
I'm
It's
working
really
on it.
on my screen.
I'm working on it. There are so many actors in Fallout. There's so many opportunities in Fallout to be torn apart by a death claw,
Yes.
have a rad roach, consume the inside of your brain, and I'm still hoping that there'll be
But he needs a line.
well, of course you'd have a line. It would be
A real visceral scream.
or no, and that would go miles towards helping you get your SAG card, your Screen Actors Guild card. Yeah. Trying to help. I'm just trying to help.
Right.
You. That's it.
We heard the promise here. We heard the promise here. I'm working on a couple projects as well, Dan. So, if your partner doesn't do you right, hit me up. And
yeah, likewise. I'll bring wine.
Yeah, we'll get you. There we go.
That
there
always
we
works.
go. Regardless of the score, back to the ratings. I want to ask you both one at a time. Pretend that you're not hearing each other. All right. Regardless of the score, what vintage and varietal of Pursued by Bear are you most proud of so far? Kyle.
Well, I tend to like the odd years. So we're currently in 21. Our release is a 2021 for the Pursued and some of the other reds. And it was a hot year, low yielding year, but a really good year. But I also love the 19. Particularly the Twin Bear Cabernet 19 is really magical, and I go back in the 2015 jumps out at me, and then we go into even numbers, the 2012 as well.
You got to pick one. Come on, man.
No, I can't pick one. It's impossible. I usually just say my favorite vintage is the one that I'm drinking in currently. So I guess the 2021 is where we're at right now, and I'm loving it. It's so good, so good.
Dan, do you have a sentimental favorite of Pursued by Bear so far?
It would be either 2008 Baby Bear Syrah, which was the inaugural Syrah in Punchin, large format barrel, and or 2011 Pursued by Bear Cab, because 11 was an abysmal, challenging, cold, rainy, wet vintage, and the wine turned out so beautiful and elegant, and it's aged so gloriously. Or 2015 Pursued by Bear Cab, which is just, it's got it all. It checks every box. Our Chardonnay that we've come out with, the Twin Bear Chardonnay, is pretty incredible as well.
Yeah, you're right. That's our second vintage of that. And we source from It comes from the Yakima AVA. Dick Boucher is a grower. He's been around for a while, and he just does beautiful stuff in the vineyard. And so we source from him, and the Chardonnay is really good, lean and luscious, and pointing towards that elusive Burgundian style that we all really, really love. And that's where that it falls sort of on that in the wine panel. It's great.
Yeah. You guys have a tasting room that's open, correct?
Yeah, the Pursuit by Bear tasting room is in Walla Walla.
So we can get our hands on your wine through the tasting room in person, which
Yeah.
is the best because
Yeah.
it's experiential. Dan, you're there sometimes, yeah?
I do make a cameo appearance every once in a while with Kyle when he's in town on busy weekends, and yeah, we have fun.
So there, and the wine club, which you offer, which is a tremendous wine club with all sorts of cool perks. You get to be an extra in Fallout at the top tier. I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah, but you disappear very quickly. You're just,
Right. All right, so let's wrap this up. I'm going to steal from another podcast. Have you guys listened to the How I Built This podcast? You guys ever heard of that one?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, the How I Built This podcast, they ask how much of your success is about luck and how much is about, grit or hard work. And I want to ask you that of both of you. What do you think, Kyle?
There was certainly a huge amount of luck in the beginning of my career, and that's continued throughout. The chance meeting of David Lynch as he was looking for an actor for the lead role in Dune in 1983, and the fact that I happened to be in Seattle, auditioned in Seattle, and then the subsequent meeting in Los Angeles and the connection I had with David has no doubt has had a huge impact on my career. I was prepared for it. I had finished 3 years of intense training for repertory theater. I knew my stuff. I had my chops down. But that stroke of luck really turned everything around for me in a very short time. I'm very, very lucky.
Dan?
Similar answer. The luck is meeting the mentors, and the grit is listening to them and following through what they have mentored. Luck is meeting Kyle, and the grit is supporting his vision, our vision of creating better and better wines every year. So the luck is the opportunity, and the grit is following through so you don't miss out on what that opportunity potentially provided you. But the luckiest thing I've ever had in my life was meeting Amy.
Truly.
And
Well
her
put.
and her saying yes. I guess that was pretty.
Kyle, what's next for you? What are you working on next outside of Pursued by Bear?
We just wrapped season 2 of Fallout. They have a few
Congrats.
more weeks to go. I'm hoping that they'll be able to get it out at the end of the year. It's hard to know. There's a lot that they have to do, a lot of second and third unit work and editing. And then I leave in a couple weeks, I should say, to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I'm working with Ethan Hawke and Tim Blake Nelson on a little series called The Sensitive Kind, directed by Sterling Harjo, who is just the greatest guy. He created, wrote, and directed Reservation Dogs from a couple years ago, and just really a beautiful storyteller. And so I'm going to be going to Tulsa and working alongside Jean Triplehorn is also in it. I'm looking forward to seeing her. So that'll carry me into sort of mid-May.
And Dan, what's going on with you? What's next for Pursued? Anything else in the wine world in your life? What's coming up?
Bud break, and we're gonna start getting ready for a glorious summer of farming, and we're bottling the Pursued by Bear upcoming vintage in the first week of May. We've got spring release weekend, the first weekend in May, which is Walla Walla's biggest wine weekend of the year. We're really excited about that. So spring is in full bloom right now. So we're mowing and pruning and trimming and manicuring the property, and us and all the wineries getting ready for the onslaught of wonderful travelers and wine aficionados alike coming to Walla Walla.
Well, I appreciate you both giving us an hour of your time and telling us your story. Big fan of what you're doing. Really look forward to what's next. I have inquired about Pursuit by Bear at a couple of the local wine shops that I've been in, just sort of nudging them to bring it in, because I think that is important, folks. If you're at a restaurant, you're at a wine shop, and you're interested in a wine that you've heard about or that you've read about in a magazine, maybe Wine Enthusiast, or heard on a podcast, ask for it. Ask them to bring it in.
Yeah.
Just
That helps.
that's how it works. It really does.
Yeah. All of those inquiries, just hearing the name, maybe turning the somm onto a wine you didn't know about is helpful.
If the Washington section of the wine shop looks really small, say, hey,
Come on.
yeah, and make it a little bigger.
Up your game.
Oregon won't mind.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, really, thanks, guys. Thank you for your time. I wish you the best.
Todd, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Real pleasure.
I'd like to thank Kyle, Todd, and Dan for their time, conversation, and insights today. You can email us your comments and questions at podcast@wineenthusiast.com. And remember, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to your favorite shows. You can also go to wineenthusiast.com/podcast for more episodes and transcripts. I'm Jordan Kaplan. Thanks for listening.